In this movie, I'll show you how to zoom in and out of an image inside Photoshop. Now, when you first open an image, you're going to be zoomed out sufficiently so that you can see the entire thing along with a little bit of this dark gray pasteboard, which is a kind of no man's land outside of the image. You'll also be able to see how far you're zoomed out up here in the title tab. So notice that I'm seeing 25%. And that tells me that I'm seeing 1 out of every 4 pixels horizontally, as well as 1 out of every 4 pixels vertically. In other words, I'm only seeing 1 out of every 16 pixels inside this image. And that tells us that there's more pixels to be seen. In other words, we can zoom in if we like. Now, one way to do so is to go up to the View menu and choose the Zoom In command. But this is the kind of thing you're going to be doing so often that you really want to memorize this keyboard shortcut. Fortunately, it's pretty darn simple. It's Control plus here on the PC or Command plus on the Mac. And let me show you what that looks like. So if you press Control plus, again, that's Command plus on the Mac, then you're going to zoom in 1 increment. And so in my case, I've zoomed from 25% to 33%, meaning that I'm seeing 1 out of every 3 pixels horizontally and 1 out of every 3 pixels vertically. In other words, 1 out of every 9 pixels inside the image. If I press Control plus or Command plus again, I'll zoom in to 50%. So I'm seeing 1 out of every 2 horizontally, 1 out of every 2 vertically, and so 1 out of every 4 in total. Then if I press Control plus or Command plus again, I go to 66.7%. And then finally, if I press Control plus or Command plus one more time, I'm looking at the image at the 100% zoom ratio. And what that means is that I'm seeing 1 image pixel for every screen pixel. In other words, this is the most accurate view of the image possible, even though I'm only seeing part of the image at a time. Now, if I zoom in any farther than that, notice that I'm now zoomed in at 200% and then 300%, 400%, 500%, and so forth. I'm just blowing up the pixels. So I'm not getting any better definition where the image is concerned at this point. I'm just seeing the pixels larger on screen. If you zoom in to 600% or farther, then you're going to see this pixel grid, which are these fine white lines that are surrounding each and every pixel inside the image. All right, now let's say that you want to zoom out and take in more of the image at a time. Again, I could go up to the View menu and choose the Zoom Out command, but it's much easier to press Control minus or Command minus on the Mac. And that looks like this. So in my case, I'm just pressing that keyboard shortcut over and over again until I've zoomed out to the point that I can take in the entire image all at once. Now, you can zoom out farther than that. You can keep pressing Control minus or Command minus over and over again to the point that, for example, I've zoomed out to 5%. So I'm seeing very few pixels inside of this image at a time. You also have a couple of other commands to work with. Notice under the View menu, we've got this command called Fit on Screen that has a keyboard shortcut of Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac. And I'll just go ahead and use the keyboard shortcut so that we can see what happens without the menu in the way. And again, that keyboard shortcut is Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac. And notice instead of taking me to 25%, as we saw a moment ago when I first opened the image, I'm now seeing the image at 25.8%. So Photoshop is slightly zooming me in so that I can still see every bit of the image, but a little less of this dark gray pasteboard that's surrounding the image. The thing to note about these incremental zoom ratios, such as 25.8, is that they're going to be a little softer. So whereas when you're seeing the image at, for example, 25%, you're going to see it nice and sharp. As soon as you zoom into something other than 25 or 33 or 50 or 66.7 or 100%, things are going to appear ever so slightly softer on screen. Now, you're not going to be able to perceive that in the video, but over time, you are going to be able to see that on your own computer screen. And I just want you to know that's the case up front so that you don't judge the sharpness of the image based on one of these in-between zoom ratios. Now, if you want to zoom all the way into 100% at any given point in time, then there's this command under the View menu called 100%, which is pretty straightforward. But you also have a straightforward keyboard shortcut of Control 1 or Command 1 on the Mac. And so if I press Control 1 or Command 1, I'm going to zoom in to 100% so that I'm seeing one image pixel for every screen pixel. And I'm also going to zoom in on the exact center of the image, which in the case of this specific photograph, zooms us in on the model's mouth. And then once again, if you want to zoom out to take in the entire image at once, just press Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac. And those are the various ways to zoom in and out from an image. Once again, Control plus, Command plus to zoom in, Control minus, Command minus to zoom out, Control 1 or Command 1 to zoom into 100%, and Control 0 or Command 0 to zoom out to take in the entire image at a time.